Hi, William here with Embed Biosciences, makers of Microlite Vet. I sat down on Friday with Dr. Jon McAnulty, one of our co-founders and co-inventors, and Dr. Paul Ramos, who used Microlite over in Australia during the recent wildfires. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. We go through a range of topics from the Australia wildfires to wound care, and also some personal stories and stories of entrepreneurship and careers. So enjoy. This picks up with Dr. McAnulty introducing himself.
I'm a professor at the University of Wisconsin. I'm a small animal general surgeon. I chair the Department of Surgical Sciences and have a research lab. And so I'm one of the co-inventors of Microlite. And then I'm one of the co-founders of the Embed Biosciences company. And so I've been in the middle of, right from day zero where we were just throwing around crazy ideas to now where we have a commercially available product in the development of the Microlite wound dressing. And
yeah, it's an interesting dressing. Like it's like, how does it? You ask yourself, how does it stick around for so long? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's sort of almost it's almost like rice paper from the Chinese, like the stores, like it kind of disappears over time with moistness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool product.
Yeah, it's and all that was engineered in order to do that. It's like a matrix, bioresorbable matrix technology platform. And so there's all these polymer layers that are in there, and they were deliberately chosen to be electrically charged. So we stack them, negative on top of positive charges and then negative until we build up these layers. And then in the Microlite AG, we dope that with silver and reduce it to silver nanoparticles, within those layers. But because of that electrostatic charge, it attaches to the cell membranes, and you get some just basic adhesion based on electrostatic attractions. And that holds those nanoparticles right on the cell surface. And then gradually it breaks down and is basically phagocytized by macrophages.
Cool product. Yeah, I hope I didn't wake you. Did I wake you when I sent those pictures?
Oh no, that was perfect timing. I was just getting going, and all of a sudden, like my phone's just going boop boop boop, and I'm like,
yeah, I was just kind of I was scrolling through thinking, what do I have? So I had to look back and what I had in February. But
half of me thought it was WhatsApp, so it's half of me thought like what group is having like a crazy back and forth that I'm gonna have to catch up with right now, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it was.
Like I can't even I have a hard time just downloading it to myself, and like WhatsApp is just a real savior.
Yeah.
I had to kind of email that, and it doesn't fit, and but that was sort of a before and after of just a week. Pretty amazing.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah,
those
it was
koala bears or
those kangaroo paws.
Oh.
Those ones. Yeah,
that's what we're looking at right there. I was just trying to bring up over here. I was going to show the sort of the layering of the technology, but yeah, you sent me this one, and I'll jump over here. So I guess for the benefit of anybody else who's going to watch this, so you were over in Australia, and you were now were you connected with? Did you ever meet up with Dr. Jamie Payton?
No, I didn't cross paths with her. No,
Okay.
It was mainly with Michelle Oakley.
Okay. Oh, so it was a third degree connection there. Yeah.
So Michelle and I, we were working together a lot, and she told me about Jamie, and then like these were the products I think she brought over, Jamie. So Michelle trained me up, and then I trained the other teams up.
And one of the other co-founders works with Jamie there at UC Davis, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that worked out, and then she got a hold of me, and we had already sort of been sending some out when another gentleman at the company, Jeff Dawson, He's the VP of product. I had recently started at the company, and he came to me and he said, "You heard about the Australia wildfires?" And I was like, "Oh, bingo, of course. What can we do? Let's, and then you're thinking, oh, regulatory, oh, this, oh, that. And the authorities there were really smart to just say, okay, as long as it's not like, like a prednisone or something or a drug or whatever, just bring it in.
Yeah.
So
they were like,
yeah.
They were really helpful. They were like, there was a fast track for me to reinstate my license, which is in Victoria. But then they said it's fine to me to work in New South Wales. I mean, they just wanted to get things done. I was very impressed with the lack of bureaucracy in New South Wales. And
I mean, just to like remind folks of the seriousness, I was really struck by this video that you took where you see the devastation, but then in particular, as soon as I saw these little trails right here under this truck, I said, oh, that's melted metal.
It's a molten engine block. That's a melted engine block.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow,
that video there, I actually got a bit emotional because it's like, it's so, I don't know. It's a mixture of anger and humility and awe. At just sort of the speed and the ferocity that the fires would go through. The crown fires and literally they would almost explode from the oils of the eucalyptus trees, and it would just go whoosh. And the survivors that I've talked to, one of them described it as literally sounds like a Boeing 747 engine. It's that powerful in sound. And wow. Up until recently as well, the fires are so powerful. This wasn't really known, maybe because it never really happened, but it's more understood now. But they literally create their own weather, like literally create their own weather. It's something that they didn't anticipate. It was very humbling. Right over the hill, if you were to look to my left over the hill on that shot, was where those American firefighters died when they crashed their planes. I think there were 4 American firemen. They were trying to save this place, and they lost their lives, and they ran to the hillside. So that's where that was.
That's amazing.
Can you play sound with it? Can you play sound?
So sad. Yeah. I think here, I'll do it a little, I'll do it a little old school here. I'll play it out through my speakers, and hopefully it's not too garbled. Are you saying on that last one, you want me to go back to that last one?
No, that's okay. But like,
this one here?
Yeah.
Okay. You hear it?
Yeah.
There's some, I saw a lizard. So that's similar. I mean, look at where I am.
Trying my best to be okay. Trying my best, but every day it's so hard. Holding my breath.
So when I was there, I posted on TikTok. Do you guys know TikTok?
Yeah, I know TikTok. Yeah, it looks like Dr. McAnulty's. I don't know, maybe connection might have dropped. I'm kind of curious as to how you kind of got to that place where you could be, involved in that kind of wildlife.
He's joining us.
Effort, because
right, yeah. You mean in Australia? You mean in Australia in particular?
Yeah, or I'm sure that there's. I didn't like creep around too much, right? But and just in general, the wildlife rescue piece. Obviously that became an interest. But was it an interest before, or did you go into it kind of? What's the story there?
I guess to back up a little bit, the whole reason I went to vet school was because I wanted to work in conservation, in wildlife and conservation, and that was the reason why I went to vet school. It was a long way to get to the point where I actually had the skills to become like a zoo and wildlife vet. And along the way, you know, your nose is so down and you're so in the thick of it from the learning that you forget about why you're there, and you forget to look up sometimes. That only in the last couple of years have I sort of looked up and I said, okay, I've got the skills that I need now. I've kind of like, I've got the means to an end now. I think I need to get back to what really truly lights that fire inside of me. So I needed to go back to conservation. And so my way of doing that has been through storytelling. I'm very passionate in sharing how very connected we all are, both to each other and to the natural world. This is all one big ecosystem. And along the way, we kind of forgot that. And the first step is to acknowledge that and to plant that seed that we're a part of the natural world. And then people, I think, will naturally sort of take it from there once it's been acknowledged. But I see that as my role. So that's what set me off on the journey to like go to Borneo in 2018 and film a documentary around orangutans and deforestation. That in turn led to being a vet on Nat Geo Wild's TV series about animal rescue in India. And the Australian bushfires that happened, you know, earlier in 2020, that happened because literally I got on a plane. Really, that was it. Okay. I could jump in with the teams because I'd lived in Australia and I'd formed relationships with people, and so they already knew me. They've already worked with me in the past, and they knew I was these two important things. I was like, I had a basic skill set, and I was like normal, you know, and that's so important to be just like a normal person when the times get stressful in a field situation. So I could just jump in and like literally within 24 hours after I landed, I hit the ground running.
That's good. That's, you know, because I talk to even folks in our own company who are interns and they're interested in going into veterinary medicine. So it's always nice to see just how versatile, you know, paths can be, and that basic piece of forming those relationships, because you never know when that's going to come back around and open a door. That's interesting.
Oh, relationships. I mean, yeah. That is fundamental. That is key. That's where it's at. And that's why you're kind. Be kind to people. And because not because you want something from someone, but karma has a way of coming back around. And, you know, that person can be easily someone that you can collaborate with or work under in 5 or 10 years time. And it always pays off to just be a kind, thoughtful person. And it feels right, but it's also a smart thing to do as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, relationships are key.
Yeah, absolutely. You had started asking about the microlight, and I had the benefit of getting the sort of the back story. I thought, Dr. McAnulty, if you'd want to share what you kind of shared with me and Dylan when we were over there, that must have been February or March.
Yeah, it was before my last haircut, I think.
All right, there we go. Yeah, yeah, that was before my last shave. So, yeah. So it, you know, the re-engineering piece, just that rethinking of the problem. That was something that I found very interesting.
Well, you know, the original concept, and it started with me, Chris Murphy, who's at UC Davis, used to be at Wisconsin, and a chemical engineer named Nick Abbott. You know, we were just kind of looking at doing some things in wound healing. And, you know, we're just very disappointed in kind of the way the field is structured, which is often about finding some silver bullet drug or compound that you can drizzle on a wound and it'll magically make everything get better. And so we just kind of re-envisioned the whole concept, which instead of treating a wound surface, which we kind of liken to a farmer's field that has infertile soil, and so no matter what you do to it, it's really not going to grow, you know, plants, or in our case, cells on that surface very well. And we wanted to change the wound bed. So the whole idea was not to treat it, but to actually just fundamentally change it. And that spawned a whole series of ideas looking at covalent modification of the cell surfaces and the topographical nanoscale features of the wounds. But the thing that got the most traction was this adhesion of these nanoscale layers to the wound surface in order to mobilize these therapeutics there, which, you know, the lowest hanging fruit was to go with an antimicrobial, so which is why we have the nanoparticulate silver. And so that started out with a grant from UW, and we, you know, had kind of a small scale operation. And then when the economic downturn came around the U.S., you know, the Obama administration set up these grand opportunity grants, and these were big grants intended to really push things forward. And so we wrote one of those, and it turned out that Chris and I were traveling across the country, and so we were kind of, at the time, you know, we didn't have a hotspot or any of the nice things you have for internet connection now. And so we ended up going war driving in South Dakota looking for an open internet connection. So, you know, back in the early days of the internet, you know, the tech guys used to talk about war driving, or you drive around until you got an open connection, and then you could hook into the internet. And so we found one behind some dusty old motel in a little tiny town in South Dakota. And we downloaded this grant to the NIH using that connection. And not too much longer later, we got $4 million to really like push this thing through. And that just exploded the efforts and really brought this whole thing to, you know, a commercially applicable product that you can hold in your hands as opposed to a theoretical construct, and a startup company, which is in bed now, and has provided a lot of employment. And at the same time, you know, I haven't personally used it in the more exotic species, but I use it a lot in small animals in our clinic, and the results are just remarkable that I've seen. You know, particularly wounds that just don't seem to move with any other of our other treatments. So we've been pretty gratified that, you know, kind of a, you know, a bootstrapped effort like that has paid off so well.
That's fantastic. I can tell you from my experience. So in the Australian bushfires, mainly back in February, I was working with Macalite. And the thing about your wild animals is that you can't knock them out every day. You know, you really risk Keepimopathy, kidney issues, stress, welfare issues. It's just, you can't do it. You can't work with a product that only lasts for 12 to 24 hours. So when we had the opportunity to use this product, it really helped us to, it was amazing. Like you saw those pictures of the before and after of even just 1 week. You had a really angry, painful, active wound that was well on its way to healing even just a week later. So we could keep a close eye on it, but at a reasonable distance because of the duration of activity. So it was, yeah, there we go. Yeah, actually, that's good. That's a good video. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the before. Oh yeah, and yeah, that video you actually do. Yeah, you show.
Look at this. This is when we red and angry, sort of this positive. Now look at today.
That's before. That's after.
Wow, that is remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that with these animals, it's literally it's life and death. You know, being a wild animal that bears all of its weight on its feet and it uses its hands to like that's a mother that on the table and her baby was waiting right outside the door. She needs to have functional hands and feet, and so it's not like just you know, just a disuse issue. It's a life and death issue. And with these feet and hands, you know, it's either that things go well or you don't make it at all.
Yeah.
And it's not just hers. It's more multi-generational. Her baby is not going to make it, and the baby inside of her. So yeah, many levels.
Yeah, and I just thought, I don't know, since you're the conservation guy, I just thought of this. You know, predators go after the weak. So does that then also create like a predator heyday, where all of a sudden all of them are kind of stumbling around, and now you've got the birds coming in, you've got, you know, they're all just being gluttonous, and I don't know.
You don't really have any.
Everything's connected.
Yeah, that's right. The fires came through at such a ferocious rate that it pretty much anything in its way was taken down. And we're talking about something almost the size of England. That's how big the fires were. It's many times on a higher scale than the California fires, if you can imagine it.
Wow.
So anything around didn't make it, so there weren't predators anyways. But yes, birds would be an issue. Crows and ravens, if you're have taken bite, they're taking chunks out of you if you down, and definitely fly strike and things like that are definitely an issue for sure.
Good point. I wonder when you're observing your patients, it's always hard to assess pain, and I'm wondering behaviorally, were you able to ascertain any difference after treatment with their sensitivity, like on their feet? I know that, so the microlight really, there's two lines. So there's a veterinary approved product and there's a human approved product, and chemically they're identical, but in the US we have to separate those product lines. In our human line, that's also being tested in people with some really terrible wounds, and what we're getting in terms of feedback is they get almost immediate relief from pain in these wounds, even though there's no analgesics in the product at this time. That's something we're working on, but I think just having that polymer layer covering that wound surface seems to help these people immensely. So I don't know if you were able to observe anything like that in your patients.
It's hard to say because there was nothing to really compare it to. These fires are definitely happening at a greater frequency. So rather than once in every 50 years, it's going to be once in every 5. Because the seasons are starting earlier and they're leaving later and they're hotter. But at this point, still, I didn't have anything enough to compare it to from the past. So it's difficult to tell. There's no control group. They're very well bandaged, and these guys in that one in that video, they had to be inside because it was rainy and muddy, so they were actually homebound anyways. But I guess it's a bit trickier with wild animals because they mask pain a bit better. But
that's true.
There are people who can read them a lot. Like, I'm a vet, so I'm not really good at that animal behavior stuff as much as wildlife care, for example. But I bet they would say that they look at things like, is she moving? How is she moving? And how's she carrying herself and her face? What is she? How does her face look? They can tell a lot from their facial expressions. But a lot of them were, of course, in the first few weeks would be very, very painful. But the thing is, like, gosh, a lot of them made it. A lot of them made it to eventually be released. What we also found out was eventually that these full thickness burns would expose digits as well eventually, and that was a real issue. But the team persisted and things went okay. Yeah. I think the presence of antimicrobials constantly there is very helpful. And that also removes the whole issue of systemic antibiotics,
Right.
Not only like the logistics of it, because you just can't continually dart an animal, but it's also not the right thing. You should be really focusing on the wound, and avoid systemic antibiotics if at all possible. So it really helps to have to sort of avoid that whole issue.
Yeah, and one thing with the silver is that it's really unusual to get any sort of bacterial resistance to that, as compared to antibiotics, where you can build up these resistant populations.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean. Like, and I think the more that message is spread, and the message will be spread, I think, by solid case studies. Like, this actually works. This isn't just a theory. It actually works to use these topicals and focus on that and forget about systemics, unless there's other evidence of systemic infection. Hopefully the vet industry will get that good nudge to focus more on a topical product. But I guess to be fair, up until this point, there haven't been a lot of reliable topical products to use, that had a long duration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really a big issue, and particularly on your patient population. Like you say, just the handling alone is a big detriment to
Yeah.
those patients.
Yeah. So any big muscled animal like a kangaroo, you're really risking Keepimopathy. It's almost inevitable if you just do it over and over and over again.
Mm.
So yeah.
What else is on the radar for you right now in terms of things that people might be thinking about supporting out there? I mean, obviously there was an outpouring of support for the Australia wildfires. Are there other things like that, or if there's veterinarians or young veterinarians out there who might be able to go and do something, who are looking for something like that to kind of volunteer themselves for? And is there anything else like that coming up or that you see?
I guess when these things happen, it's never something that just comes up. It just happens all of a sudden, and everybody it's kind of a sense of urgency is created.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, that shouldn't be the case. We know there's going to be another fire in Australia. We know it's definitely going to be within another decade and probably another 5 years. We shouldn't be scurrying around collecting things and figuring things out, last minute. But that's, I don't know.
So it might be more a matter of getting connected to some of these groups.
Yes, that's it.
Like you were with Vets for Compassion, right? Was that the one that you're connected
to?
Or was it?
I was wearing two hats. I was with Vets for Compassion, and I was also, so that's a small on the ground mobile group. They're just a group of doers. They just go in and get things done. They go below the politics, below the radar, and it was really, really good to work with them because there was a lot of infighting with some of the other groups. But I also worked as a vet for IFA, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. That's a larger group with a different sort of scope of focus, but those two groups worked really, really well together because they had the same mission, and that is to help these animals on the ground. So they worked together really well by providing either in-kind support or direct support. Good. And so I wear both hats there. But yeah, it's fantastic to work with individuals and organizations that they're practical and they are optimistic, positive, and they're proactive. It's really just, it's a reminder that, okay, a small group of people, we can get this done if we work together.
Yeah, no, I can speak to that too. It's like you said, in terms of flying below the politics. I mean, also being kind of brave. There's the politics between organizations, but then there's also the concern about the regulatory stuff. And Vets for Compassion folks said, no, just send it. If the regulatory folks want to, have an issue, we'll deal with it. Just, bring it on.
And they had support as well. They had support, like legal support from Animals Australia as well. So who had a lawyer on their team, so they could provide if something needed to be found out, like they had access to a lawyer straight away to just figure it out, to clear the path, so everybody worked together really well.
Cool. Sounded like a really remarkable experience, with everybody kind of pulling in the same direction.
That's exactly what it was. Like it just happened. I don't know. I think it was, it's about creating those, you were asking William about how other vets can do this. There are a few things you can do to set yourself up to be in the right position. One of them definitely, as I mentioned before, is just forming those relationships now and being present in the world. People hire who they want to work with. It doesn't really, your resume doesn't matter. They will hire who they want to work with. So if they don't know you, they're not going to hire you, or someone can vouch for you that you're fun and capable and all these other things. So forming relationships now will always be something that's important. And it's been like that since the beginning of time, really. But there are other things as well. One big thing I think is there comes a point when you just need to stop planning and pondering and asking and wondering, and you just need to take the leap and you just need to go. Like if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, sometimes you just need to take the leap and figure it out as you go. Like when I went to Borneo, I had no idea how to make a documentary film, but I bought a plane ticket and I figured it out along the way. And I think some people are just living a little bit too much in fear when the actual risk is not doing anything. So it really pays to just start, to just go.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're not successful, you learn a lot along the way, and you guarantee that you won't really have a life of regrets. Importantly, but just start.
Yeah.
You know, stop pondering. And vets can be we can be so in our head. You know, we can be so sensitive, and we can just overthink things. And you know, there's the underside of being a good vet. You need to be sensitive and be a good team player and all that stuff that helps you to work well with animals. But the underside of that is you're too sensitive, that you don't take criticism well, so, you know, you don't want to speak up, but, you know, acknowledge that that's a part of being a good vet, and just move forward, just act.
Yeah. I always like the kind of saying, I don't know, lesson that, you know, if you're not failing at least in some way, then you have nothing to learn. You know, the only reason you're going to learn something is because you're not doing it exactly correct. You know, and I think Dr. McAnulty being, you know, in the surgical world, you probably see this a lot with, you know, I can just imagine, you know, being in a position of doing surgery or being a surgical student. I myself, I'm not going to go, and it's a little too late for me, I'm not going to be a surgeon, but just imagine, you know, it's like when you're going to put that knife down, then yeah, it's time to stop theorizing about it, and you got to just go for it. And at some point, you're going to be working on a live patient.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, the real analogy is there's so many surgeries or even other things you do in the veterinary field where the answers are not known yet. And so you have to be willing to take some level of risk, but also knowing, like, where's the line where you're really just being a wild card and not really thinking it through. And that's the only way to push back the envelope and create new things. And so that's what we did with the microlight. You know, we just took a whole different tack. Certainly I do that in my surgical practice. We're careful, but we're innovative. Because there's many things that if you go to the textbooks, there really are no good answers. And so you have to always be thinking, always be willing to push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah. Thinking, testing, and getting that own, like getting the quick feedback to change course. Like you think, you test, you get the feedback, you change direction. You think, you know, like thinking, like acting in the short term. Thinking in the short term, so you get that quick feedback, so you can pivot quickly, is really useful as well. Like once you know where you want to go, like let's say you want to be a vet in Africa in 12 months time, 18 months time, fine, that's great. You know, look in that direction, but then only look down for what you can get done today, this week, and the most next 2 weeks to go that one step closer to that goal. Get that done. Prioritize, execute. Prioritize, execute. And then look up every once in a while, like as if you're crossing, you know, stones in a river, but focus on stone to stone, taking that step to step. And those little wins also give you confidence, and confidence gives you momentum, and momentum is everything.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Good. Well, anything else that we wanted to kind of discuss through? I've kind of run my list of questions. Topics.
Well, I shot off some messages to the people still in the field. Even dealing with some of these animals that were treated, you know, with microlight is really being the mainstay of their treatment. In other words, you know, you've got these massive, horrible burns, full thickness. You've got to get through your debridement stage, granulation stage. It's a long, drawn-out process of weeks to months. You got to wait until the forests grow back and all that. And now it's starting to happen where we're now at the release stage. And the feedback is that the product has been marvelous. And they're actually, like, literally now, like last week, they released another one of these guys back into the wild.
Oh, that's amazing. I had no idea. So they've been doing,
still working at it.
treatment on these. Wow. Okay.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
Like there's different stages of healing.
They were saying like hundreds of animals were actually being put in like makeshift facilities that they had popped up, like big giant circus tent kind of
No,
thing.
not like that. It was like in people's houses.
Okay.
Like yeah, they were like
Crappy.
yeah, the like this one I had to recover her on someone's couch. I was literally working out of someone's house.
Yeah.
That's the life of a wildlife care, but they were overburdened because of the scale of things. That's where, you know, Vets for Compassion IFAO came in to help out, to help them get organized and for their own mental health, so that they could, you know, do this important work.
Yeah.
But also I spoke with, you know, like Michelle Oakley, the Yukon vet. You know, she was very, very positive about microlite as well. So yeah, it was a really good overall experience.
That's great.
I guess one question I had was the duration of activity. What are there different products for different, like is there like a 3-day one and a 7-day one, or how does that work?
No. So with our FDA approval, you know, we are able to claim, and we have obviously tons of data showing that we have consistent release of the silver for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
In the lab, what we found is that we get release actually much longer than that, but some of it does depend on how effusive the wounds are.
Mm-hmm.
So if the wounds in the early stages are highly effusive, you know, it'll tend to exfoliate the material off into a covering bandage, and so we'll apply it more frequently.
But that's okay though, because you can keep it closer on it in those earlier stages.
Yeah. And then what we find is that when we're treating these wounds, as we apply it, the effusion tends to drop off really rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it does, we just go to longer and longer intervals.
Right.
So, and I don't think in reality we even know how long it continues to elute silver in the wound. So we've seen in the lab, you know, more than 10 days. Mm-hmm. So I think as the wounds get to be very quiescent and they're healing, there's probably a really long-lasting effect, but we can't claim that as part of our, you know, our product materials.
Yeah. A couple of things. One interesting point is that, so right now I'm in England, but before that I was in Australia for 15 years, and I was the bushfire response manager for the largest animal hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. And in that role, I really helped the vet industry, private and public and governmental, sort of in the state of Victoria, in the preparedness for the next bushfire in terms of triage and wound care and things like that. So I'd held, you know, large seminars and auditoriums, and we also put together, I'm pretty sure it was the world's only webinar in burns care for veterinary burns care. Like I don't think there's any other, because there's never been a need. After that, the Malibu fires happened. But I think that webinar needs to be updated a bit, because that one was heavily based on flamazine, and daily bandage changes is just not going to cut it for wildlife. You just, you know, so I think it would be good one day to create another webinar series. I think there's a lot more interest now in burns care in Australia and in the US. And you guys could be in that space. And if you want, I can show you that the webinar. I think the principles are still there in terms of the phases of healing and all that, but the treatment, now that microlite is here, has changed. And you should think about that. You should think about it, because hundreds to thousands of vets across the world will log in and listen to that webinar, especially around November in Australia. And you know, around June, July in the US, they'll probably get some CPD. They'll want to log on to that. So there's a need, and you guys can help fill it.
Yeah.
And you know, let me know. I can show you that other webinar. It was made with Dr. Arthur House. He's a specialist surgeon from the Royal Vet College, but I was working with him in Australia. So he's the one who actually put that together. I helped put it together, but he was the actual author of it.
Yeah, that's an outstanding idea. I think, we'd love to work on that, and certainly would, you know, welcome your help, particularly with the, you know, the wildlife perspective, which is not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
I think that presents some special challenges with those types of wounds.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and you have to think about certain, like some animals really need their thumb, for example, for climbing, or, you have to just consider that in terms of the initial triage as well, as to what will go the next stage of healing. It's a very important decision process, especially at the beginning, as to whether or not you are going to do this, because you don't want to make a euthanasia decision 10 weeks down the road when you should have made it, 10 minutes into it.
Right.
Yeah. And then another thing is, so I was there, and I mentioned I made TikTok videos, and those TikTok videos, my videos alone in Australia were viewed over 18 million times. And
wow.
Yeah. But that was mine. And then mine were shared, like literally my stuff was on the NBC nightly news in the US. It was shared by celebrities and, on online media all over the world. So it's at least double or triple that again as well. So when things like these happen, and you have the right person who's creative enough, like I'm also a creator, there's opportunities to storytell, and it matters because if you have an important message, you have a product that can make the difference between life or death of wild animals, right? And so it's worth telling that. So think about, I know it's a funny word to talk about, but marketing is something that can help make the world a better place as well. Is make it a worse place, but
yeah. No, I think it's like you said, it's storytelling. So yes, we're telling people about a product. So it is marketing. To be honest about that, I'm fine with that. And our by far most successful advertisement to date has been simply a 15-second clip on Facebook of the microlight absorbing into what's actually a piece of porcine skin in the laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little snippet of that one piece. You know what I'm talking about, Dr. McAnulty? It's
yes.
because and then Facebook says has to be under 15 seconds, otherwise they kind of nerf your advertisement. So okay, I found the 14-second trim, and all of a sudden, boom, just tons of comments, people sharing it. Who shares an advertisement? Well, if you think it's interesting, you share it. So again, it's just telling the story visually, and there's no words or anything. It's like when you're just panning and there's all of this devastation, you can narrate, but the impact value is really
very impactful.
So we've seen that.
You could do that 10 to 15 seconds story from the very beginning to release, microlight onto that, boom, 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 just a quick view of every 2 weeks of the wound healing, and then the animal releases back into the wild in 15 minutes, 50 seconds. That would be freaking viral.
Yeah.
That would go like, so I posted 45 times, and 39 of those got an average of about 45,000 each, and 3 of them got in the several hundreds of thousands, and 3 in the several millions. But like something like that, where you can be creative with, and it's like, and then you have that ending, which is really powerful, like that, hundreds of thousands easily.
Yeah.
You could see. So thinking about, the next time something happens, if you guys are in the space, think about that as well. It's an opportunity to spread an important message.
Well, it's funny. It's like you said earlier, kind of by way of advice to some folks who are just starting their careers. Here it is happening in real time. This is it's a very good connection. And like I said, when we heard about the Australia situation, it was just, all right, what can we do, right? Let's do something. And then the relationship started forming. So now it's exciting, and I'm glad you're sharing this, because we can definitely do more in the future. And I look forward to it.
Yeah, and I guess we were all doing that. I was with my family in California at the time. It's Christmas, and I knew that because I was a wildlife vet, had experience with Australian wildlife, doing a zoo residency there. I've had experience in bushfire response. I knew I was uniquely positioned where I could do something, so I got in a plane and I did it. And you guys, likewise, like there was, hundreds of thousands of burned animals coming out of the forest, and you guys were also in a position where you could actually do something about this. And I think that even for our own well-being, to be a part of this world, I think that's really valuable to do, and we can all do our part. But it's great to have relationships like this for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, when it comes to things like, product development and sales and all this business stuff is, I'm a university professor, so I'm completely naive about all this. But to be part of this and to watch how well it works and then have an opportunity to interact with people like yourself and see some really positive impacts on the world stage has been just remarkable for us.
Yeah, it's been really good working with the product. Thank you so much. If you want to even know individual animal stories, I've got those as well. One of them, I worked with the U.S. Embassy in Australia. They came to visit, and they named the young kangaroo named Hope, and she's got all of her hands and feet are all bandaged, and she ended up being okay. But I mean, there's actually individual animal stories as well. So there's names and faces to it.
Yeah.
And lots of mamas and babies and lots of koalas, and yeah.
Good. Well, I'm going to say yes. Let's do that. Let's, I don't want to say reignite. Let's keep the story going, and remind folks of what's going on. I think the kind of one lesson for anybody who ends up watching this is that this isn't a one-time thing. These issues are still going on, and there's a lot that everybody can do. And so, we'll definitely stay in touch and want to continue to share your story and the broader context of things. Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Paul.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to Wisconsin. I've actually been to 49 states, mainly as a little boy, in the back of a Winnebago as a kid. But Wisconsin is one of those places that it's got lots of great natural beauty, and I want to go back. I've lived in North Dakota and Montana, so I lived in the region.
Well, you're always welcome. You got a home here, so.
Cool. I know I've been gone for 20 years. It's time for me to come back.
All right. But, well, yeah, thanks again. Thanks for coming on, Dr. Ramos, Dr. McAnulty. Really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. We'll keep on collaborating on all these fronts.
Great.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and thank you for your work in Australia. That's just very inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, couldn't be done without you guys. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.